Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Brazos Valley, or Brazos UU for short. My name is Katie Womack, and I am serving as your worship assistant today. I come to this church because being a Unitarian means being humanitarian, and that resonates with me. We are a welcoming congregation, which means we celebrate and welcome all people of diverse sexual orientations and gender identities. We also strive to welcome people across diversities of race, age, ability, immigration status, and belief. So, whoever you are, wherever you have come from, wherever you are on life's journey, you are welcome here. We encourage everyone to visit our website, brazos-uu.org. During this time of pandemic and in the midst of our planned building project, the website and our weekly services are our church home. If you might like to contribute your musical talents, if you have a great story to share about your life's journey, or if you have a passion for social justice, we would love to hear from you. If you're interested in getting involved, you can find opportunities on our website. To learn more about our community and what is happening, you can join our email list and our monthly newsletter. And you can also find us on social media by searching UUCBV. Our service today is about Easter.
Our call to worship this morning comes from Elizabeth M. Strong. She writes, "Out of the earth rises light, rises life, rises spring. May we join with the miracle that is springtime and enter into life with lightness and joy. Out of the Spirit rises faith, rises hope, rises love. May we join with the miracle that is Easter time and enter into life with hope and love. Let us resurrect with spring. Let us resurrect with the Spirit and enter into renewed life as we gather into our time of worship together this Easter morning."
Thank you, Reverend Christian. I invite you to light your own chalice, if you have one, as I light our chalice today. Please say our chalice lighting words with me. We light the chalice, the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith, as a beacon of hope for all who seek justice, dignity, and compassion, and in celebration of the life of truth and meaning we share together. Now please join me in saying our affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its gift. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Hi everybody, my name is Mark David Buckles, and I'm going to be sharing the song Bright Morning Star with you. Hope you'll sing it with me. Some of you might be familiar with the song in the Unitarian Universalist hymnal, Bright Morning Stars. My understanding is that the song originally was Bright Morning Star, about our sun. Bright morning star is arising, or bright morning stars arising. This is also a different melody from maybe the one you've heard. It's, in my understanding, an old Appalachian melody, and it's got some additional verses written by my friend and colleague Matt Meyer. So here's how the song goes. Bright morning stars arising, bright morning stars arising, bright morning stars arising. Day is a breaking in my soul. So I'm going to line that out for you. I'll sing one line, invite you to sing it back with me. Bright morning stars arising, your turn. Bright morning stars arising. Bright morning stars arising, bright morning stars arising, bright morning stars arising, bright morning stars arising. Day is a breaking in my soul. Day is a breaking, day is a breaking in my soul. So let's try that whole thing together. Bright morning stars arising, bright morning stars arising, bright morning stars arising. Day is a breaking in my soul. Let's try that one more time. Bright morning stars arising, bright morning stars arising, bright morning stars arising. Day is a breaking in my soul. Rise up from morning slumber, rise up from morning slumber, rise up from morning slumber, rise up from morning slumber. Day is a breaking in my soul. Rise up and hear your calling. 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 Day is a breaking in my soul. Oh, lift your voice to heaven. 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 Day is a breaking in my soul. We'll sing out loud for justice. 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 Day is a breaking in my soul. We'll build this faith together. 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 Day is a breaking in my soul. Bright morning star arising, bright morning stars arising, bright morning stars arising. Day is a breaking in my soul. One more time, bright morning stars arising, bright morning stars arising, bright morning stars arising. Day is a breaking in my soul. Day is a breaking, day is a breaking in my soul. Day is a breaking, day is a breaking in my soul. One more time. Day is a breaking in my soul.
Happy Easter, everyone. Now, does anyone here know why Easter is an important day? There are lots of great stories and traditions about Easter. Long ago, around this time of year, pagans in Germany and elsewhere celebrated a holiday to honor Oestra, the goddess of fertility whose symbol was a bunny rabbit. Ancient peoples across the world celebrated the coming of spring by painting eggs, a symbol of abundance and new life. And there's also a story about Jesus. Who remembers the other big holiday we celebrate about Jesus? You might remember it's called Christmas. Our story picks up many years after Christmas, many years after he had been born and grown up and become a carpenter like his father Joseph. Our story picks up even after he had begun to teach people that God loves everyone. Jesus had traveled far and wide with 12 of his friends and sometimes his mom and some of her friends, preaching and teaching and healing people. He was a good friend to many people, especially poor people who were being bullied by the rich and powerful. But unfortunately, the bullies heard about what he was doing and they didn't like it. They wanted everyone to think they were the most important, most powerful people. And Jesus taught that with great power comes great responsibility, that power and wealth are supposed to be used to make the world more fair. Eventually, the Romans, who controlled that part of the world, killed Jesus. He died on a Friday and was placed in a tomb, which is somewhat like a cave, with a huge, heavy stone rolled across the entrance so that no one could disturb his body. Everyone rested the next day because Jesus was Jewish, and Saturday is a day of rest in the Jewish faith. But when Sunday dawned, Jesus' mother and some other women went to the tomb to get his body ready to be buried. As they walked to the tomb, they asked each other, "Who will roll the stone away so that we can go inside?" But when they got there, they saw the stone had already been rolled away. And when they went inside, all they saw was a young man dressed in a white robe. What on earth was going on? Where was Jesus? They wondered. "Don't be afraid," said the man. "You were looking for Jesus who died. But he's risen from the dead. He isn't here. But go, tell his friends that Jesus has gone to Galilee." Well, they didn't know what to believe. Someone rising from the dead, that sounded kind of out there. But the women left the tomb and went to tell others that what they had seen and heard. In a sense, the women, then, were the first preachers in the Christian tradition. And both those first women preachers and later his other friends and followers would tell of how he appeared to them, urging them to travel far and wide, sharing his teachings about justice, fairness, and the love of God for every single person. People have been telling this story for thousands of years now. And just like the women at the end of the story, we hear it today and many of us don't know what to believe. But the truth in a story doesn't have to be limited by whether we believe the truth of a story. So we celebrate the truth in this Easter story just as we do the many other stories from earth-based traditions. We celebrate the return of love, the bursting forth of new life, the return of good things, maybe even the return of someone or something we had thought lost forever. Thank you. Please prepare yourself to join me in a time of prayer and quiet reflection. Our prayer today is from the Reverend Kathleen Rollens. It's called Easter is Breaking. Let us pray. Somewhere across the world, Easter is breaking. Not the Easter we may think of with arms upraised and "He is risen" echoing from canyons, but a much quieter, less dramatic Easter. Somewhere in the world, perhaps not this day, but someday soon, people rise from their beds, shaking the sleep from their eyes, and find their children already awake and preparing for their morning prayers. There's been no gunfire, no drug wars, no yelling or shouting or screaming, only the quiet of the night and the peace of silence around them. And somewhere in the world, perhaps not this morning, but soon, very soon, a soldier is packing his duffel bag, has emptied out all his bullets, is changing into civilian clothes, and is coming home. For peace has long been established, and there's no need for his presence. And somewhere in the world, Easter dawn breaks over the earth, not only on this day, but every day. And the familiar pulse in our veins throbs of peace, peace, peace. Join me in a time of silence. Amen. Each week we take a time in our service to share those joys and concerns, sorrows and milestones most on our hearts and minds. If you have something to share, please do so in the chat box at any time so that all of us might share with you. We lift up a few concerns and joys in particular. The first of all is the vaccine rollout, which continues to accelerate all across our country and all across our world. As more and more people are vaccinated against COVID-19, we rejoice. We also support, sympathize, and grieve with those still suffering from the effects of this terrible virus. For all of those who have died, for the family of those who have died, and for those who are still suffering the effects of the virus, we lift up our concern and send out our support and love. We remember, as we do each week, that Black lives matter. As we strive for justice, equity, and anti-racism, our work must continue until truly all lives matter in this country. And until Black lives matter, not all lives matter. If you haven't already, there's certainly time to express any joy or sorrow that you wish to share with everyone in the chat box. There's so much going on in our world. Know that each of us are with you and all of us together support you in this time. If there's something that hasn't been shared, know too that we still support you, even if you can't share it with us right now. Thank you. Our reading today is called The Glad Surprise, from Meditations of the Heart by the Reverend Dr. Howard Thurman. He writes, "There's ever something compelling and exhilarating about the glad surprise. The emphasis is upon glad. There are surprises that are shocking, startling, frightening, and bewildering, but the glad surprise is different from all these. It carries with it the element of elation, of life, of something over and beyond the surprise itself. The experience itself comes at many levels. The simple joy that comes when one discovers that the balance in the bank is larger than the personal record indicated, and there's no error in accounting. The realization that one does not have his door key, the hour is late and everyone is asleep, but someone very thoughtfully left the latch off, just in case. The dreaded meeting and a conference to work out some problems of misunderstanding, and things are adjusted without the emotional lacerations anticipated. The report from the doctor's examination that all is well, when one was sure that the physical picture was very serious indeed. All of these surprises are glad. There's a deeper meaning in the concept of the glad surprise. This meaning has to do with the very ground and foundation of hope about the nature of life itself. The manifestation of this quality in the world about us can best be witnessed in the coming of spring. It is ever a new thing, a glad surprise, the stirring of life at the end of winter. One day there seems to be no sign of life, and then almost overnight, swelling buds, delicate blooms, blades of grass, bugs, insects, an entire world of newness everywhere. It is the glad surprise at the end of winter. Often the same experience comes at the end of a long tunnel of tragedy and tribulation. It is as if a man stumbling in the darkness, having lost his way, finds that the spot at which he falls is the foot of a stairway that leads from the darkness into light. Such is the glad surprise. This is what Easter means in the experience of the race. This is the resurrection. It is the announcement that life cannot ultimately be conquered by death, that there is no road that is at last swallowed up in an ultimate darkness, that there is strength added when the labors increase, that multiplied peace matches multiplied trials, that life is bottomed by the glad surprise. Take courage, therefore. When we have exhausted our store of endurance, when our strength has failed ere the day is half done, when we reach the end of our hoarded resources, the Spirit's full giving is only begun. And thus ends our reading. As you may have noticed, I have some helpers with me today, and this special helper is going to help me with the sermon. I feel like a broken record in some respects, saying the same few words over and over again. Pandemic and unprecedented times, quarantine and vaccine. A bit more than a year ago, it would have been impossible to imagine how things would change. Things were so very different. And though it may not entirely seem like it yet, the future will again be very different. We're getting glimpses of what that might look like as more and more people are vaccinated, as some things come closer to what they used to be like. But things will be different too. It's clear that more people will be working from home. It looks like school may be more flexible and more virtual as we move forward. Travel will certainly be different than it used to be. Church will be different too. And my hope is that in many ways it will be better, more flexible, more accessible, our purpose more clear. More present will be our love for what we have, which is the chance to be together, whether that's in person or on these screens. We can only imagine the glad surprise of the women in our Easter story this morning. They rise so early that it was still dark when they went there. They go expecting to prepare Jesus' broken body for his burial, to anoint it with sweet-smelling herbs and oil so that his friends and followers could gather around his body to offer their last goodbyes. They go expecting to encounter death, but instead they find a surprise, an empty tomb, a stranger with unbelievable news that Jesus isn't dead anymore. They don't know what to believe. This is so far outside of any previous experience they've had before. But then the story says that Jesus appears to each of them in the days and weeks and months after, urging them to travel far and wide, teaching the saving message of his ministry, that the true path of salvation lies not in military might and occupying force, but in work toward justice, mercy, and compassion, and understanding that every single person bears the image of love. With no dead body, no final resting place they can visit, they are instead left to think about the possibility of what could be. They are beckoned into looking forward toward new hope, toward a possible future they believed impossible just moments before. And from there, they carry his ministry forward. His death was meant to be a humiliating deterrent. As Black liberation theologian Dr. James Cone wrote, crucifixion was the lynching of the Roman Empire. His state execution was meant to shatter the movement he was building because it was a threat to the empire. But Jesus wasn't defiled by his death. His ministry was not undone because the Roman government attempted to frame him as a criminal or a fake. As my colleague, the Reverend John Burens, explains, the resurrection was a vision, one deeply connected to radical hope, to Jewish faith that death, exile, and seemingly utter destruction can never put an end to divine love, to the sacred stories. In other words, it was a vision of glad surprise. What a blessing we have that this holiday set aside to remember again and again the glad surprises that buoy our lives and shape human history. This is the day we celebrate that pain, hate, and death do not have the final word, that something wonderful, something holy can come even out of the worst experiences. Many of the symbols of Easter testify to this idea. After a long winter when crops are just beginning to grow again and game is still scarce, it is the rabbits that first begin to appear in great numbers, probably because they will eat just about anything that grows. They are symbols of fertility, of the abundance of spring. And then there's the butterfly. It begins life as a caterpillar, then goes into its cocoon, and later emerges as a beautiful butterfly. It's a classic symbol of transformation, new life, of the losing ourselves as we once were, so that we can find ourselves as we might be. And then there's the Sahara resurrection plant. Now, this plant can survive months, even years of dehydration, rolling through the desert wherever the wind blows it. It looks dead, way past dead, actually. But when it finally does roll into a puddle of water, the plant transforms from a brown, withered up, tumbleweed-looking thing to a vibrant green plant. The Sahara resurrection plant seems a fitting Easter symbol, especially this year. It can be a hard sell to preach about resurrection this soon before Earth Day, given what we know about how the planet is doing. Human activity has impacted the planet in lasting ways that could literally come to annihilate much of the life on Earth as we know it. As you know, this isn't hyperbole, it's science. Recent UN report on climate change suggests that humanity has 11 years to make the changes we need to make before the damage we've done is irreversible. We have that long to radically reduce fossil fuel emissions. This isn't new information, we've known it for decades, but it's much more urgent. Yet despite those decades of warnings from scientists, many governments around the world, including our own, are still doing little or nothing to reduce carbon emissions. Too many are still denying outright the mountain of evidence that climate change is being caused by humans. And without government support, getting everyone from individuals choosing not to use single-use plastic to big business choosing to invest in renewables instead of fossil fuels seems next to impossible. The problem feels too big. It's too wrapped up in economic and political systems. But it's no longer some far-off problem. It affects us personally now. And yet I was reminded by a colleague earlier this week of another harmful, human-made reality that for a very long time seemed impossible to change. To say that the institution of slavery was tied up in economic and political systems is, well, an understatement. Slavery was the very foundation of the economies that created the American colonies. It became an American institution when it was written into our Constitution. On top of that, our political and religious systems work together to reinforce society's acceptance of it. But despite all that was against them, in the face of a political, economic, religious, and social system founded on slavery, at first a few and then many more believed the unbelievable. They believed that slavery could and would be abolished. I think about the faith of a people whose grandparents and parents were born into bondage, who had children taken from their arms and sold, never to be seen or heard from again. I think about the people who experienced these unspeakable things and who somehow had hearts and imaginations big enough to believe that the evil of slavery would end. Abolition, didn't come quickly. It didn't come easily, and it didn't come from on high. But against all odds, it did come, and it happened because people not only hoped it would, they believed it could, changing national and international policy so that all of humanity can live sustainably on this planet feels to many people today like it is impossible, a problem too big and complicated to solve. But it's only if we believe something is possible that it becomes worthwhile to commit ourselves to it. If love and justice could find a way through all the barriers to abolition, then perhaps that same power can move in our hearts and our hands to bring about a resurrection of the earth. I'm not suggesting the harm we've done to Earth can or will be undone entirely. Scores of species have gone extinct. Radiation from nuclear bombs and accidents permeates an entire layer of matter on the Earth's surface. In another telling of the Easter story, when Jesus appears to his followers after the resurrection, his hands, his feet, his sides still bear wounds from his execution. The wounds and scars of the past can never fully be erased. But if Easter has anything to teach us, it is that life and love are more powerful even than death. Though the path towards a healthy and sustainable relationship with the earth is unclear, it is we who must not lose hope that life will find a way. When we've gone in expecting the worst only to have the opposite happen, when we're convinced there's no hope, and suddenly it dawns, filling the empty tombs of our hearts, not with the finality of death, but with the possibility of new life. When what seems impossible somehow becomes possible, that is the glad surprise. That is the power of resurrection. That is Easter. Hallelujah.
If we were having worship service in person, this is the time when we would pass the basket. This church shares the proceeds of the offering plate donation every week to support important nonprofit organizations with which we work. This month, we will be splitting the plate with the Brazos Valley African American Museum. We support the mission of the Brazos Valley African American Museum, which is to explore, develop, preserve, and present the cultural history and heritage of African Americans. We hope to increase our connections with Bryan organizations with which we work. If you wish to make an offering, you can mail your check, or for your convenience, you can donate online. On our homepage at brazos-uu.org, you can find our mailing address at the bottom, and at the top, you will see a Donate Here link. In the chat box, you will see that link now. May each of us look into our hearts. How much love, how much generosity, how much faith, how much gratitude, how much hope is there. We give thanks for these gifts we have given, for those we receive, and for each other.
To them are
Now please join me in extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we gather together again. Thank you.
Friends, thank you for being a part of this today. Thank you for embracing the spirit of Easter, of new life and resurrection. I hope you find it wherever you go in your lives today. And so from our family to yours, Happy Easter!
Happy Easter!